Joined as always by our mid-major hoops insider, Mike Lucas. Mike had a really rocky start, started off 1-4, but as we said last week, nowhere to go but up, and that's exactly what happened. A bounce back week if we've ever seen one. I think 4-1, if I'm not mistaken, including the biggest games of the week, got all those right. Mike, glad to have you back on, and even more importantly, glad that it's on these terms and that we were able to really build that faith back up right away with our listeners.
Yeah, no one was more disappointed in my week one picks than myself. I cried about it 3 nights in a row. Then I went on a hunger strike for 2 nights. Didn't drink coffee the entire week as punishment for giving out bad picks. But I'm back. And when you talk about the greatest comeback stories in sports, you got to talk about Rocky. You got to talk about the New York Giants coming back and upsetting the perfect undefeated Patriots. Then you got to talk about Mike Lucas going from 1-4 to 4-1 in the span of 1 week. We are back to even money, ladies and gentlemen. And from now on out, I stay hot. When you're hot, when you bet, your whole life's hot. I played pickup the other day, on fire, couldn't miss. That's usually the case anyway, but I was extra hot. I sent in my package on time. Justin said your time limit's 1:45. I hit 1:44.3 seconds. I'm on a roll right now, ladies and gentlemen. So these picks, foolproof. If I don't go 5-0, I'll be disappointed in myself.
5-0, that's a bold prediction. I think, we were going to talk a little bit of discussion first, but I think after hearing that, I just want to jump right into these picks, if that's okay with you, Mike.
You see, I don't know if the viewers can see out here, but look at this research. This is called research, which, David, you're a teacher, right?
I am.
I would love to zoom in and give your class a lecture on how to research mid-major picks. It's down to a scientific method.
I don't know if they listen, but I would love to hear. I would love to hear anybody teaching on like the money line between SFA and Sam or some random thing like that. It would just be entertaining. So I might just have you do that.
It's like, what did you say about a Robert Morris in a right state?
Oh, well, you want to start there? You want to start there?
Let's fire it off. Let's start off right there.
It's a 16.5-point line. That's outrageous. And I wasn't expecting to start with this game, so I had some anecdotes that would have led into this pick. So I'm going to cut through the crap and give you the truth. Wright State is way better than Robert Morris. It's a fact. They are the premier team in the Horizon League. Robert Morris is not. You'd be crazy, and I am a little crazy to pick the Colonials to win straight up, so I'm not going to do that. But 16.5 points is way too much to give Robert Morris in this matchup. I broke down the schedule. I crunched the numbers like this paper towel. I just crunched them up. And here's what I came out with. Robert Morris has lost 7 games this year, but listen to these losses. They lost to Northern Kentucky twice, both games by 5 points, one of those in overtime. They lost to UIC, whoever the heck UIC is, by 4 in OT and then 14 in their other matchup. They lost to IUPUI by 5, Marshall by 14, and Bowling Green by 20. So of their 20 losses, only one wouldn't have covered that 16.5-point spread. It's at home. I'm taking Robert Morris. 16.5 points, too big. Morris in the points, 1 win. 1 pick, 1 win.
What you got? We did our Big Sky preview today, continued our conference preview series. We obviously talking about some Big Sky hoops. UC Santa Barbara, UC Davis. Who you got there, Mike?
This one I did the most research on because I was fascinated to learn a little bit about UC Santa Barbara, UC Davis. I thought they were one school before today, so this is really
go Guachos.
Really a mind enlightening
look
exercise.
At you. Look at that synergy with the Texas A&M Aggie reporter you and the UC Davis Aggie. Basically 2 peas in a pod.
Exactly. So the line is Santa Barbara by 6.5. Now listen to this. Santa Barbara's won 6 games in a row. The average margin of victory in those 6 games, 22.8 points. We'll round up 23 points per game. Only one of those 6 games was decided by single digits. They're 10-3 overall, 3-3 on the road. Now you look at UC Davis. They're just 3-3 all season, and they've only played 2 games since December 4th. They've had 11 games canceled or postponed due to COVID. If you do not play, you are going to be rusty, and that showed in their 2 games last weekend, which were their first 2 games since December 4th. UC Davis is better, 6.5 points, not a lot. I like the Gauchos to cruise in this one. I think the under, I'm not locking the under. The Gauchos winning and covering a lock. The under if you want to have a nice little like side bet, like a second dessert, take the under because I don't think UC Davis offense is that explosive. But the official pick, UC Santa Barbara with the points 6.5.
Love it. And if we're talking most beautiful campuses at that mid-major hoops level, I think we need to look no further than UC Santa Barbara.
I've never seen it. Is UC Irvine included in that? Because I've seen that campus. That campus is beautiful.
I've seen both. I put Santa Barbara over Irvine. Santa Barbara is like your stereotypical Southern California beach community.
I trust the man in the beanie when it comes to California school rec. So, Josh, I'm not.
There we go.
By the way, you mentioned it, and just talking about all these UC schools just had me randomly think of UC Santa Cruz, the banana slugs. Just had to randomly say that. And UIC, Illinois Chicago. I only know that because I lived there for a few years. Shout out to the Flames.
Very different than the UC schools.
And isn't UC Irvine the Anteaters? I'm pretty sure UC Irvine's the Anteaters.
I think so. The California system has some pretty solid mascots. Like their mascot game has got to be at the top. And then Bruins, like, come on now, like you can't slack on the big dog like that.
No.
Moving on to our next one though, getting back on track. A team that you had as one of your dark horse. If you're going to put down $10 to make 1,000 on a NCAA tournament hopeful, and that's the Richmond Spiders taking on St. Louis. That's a big game for your Spiders. Who you got, Mike?
It's a big game for both teams, and it's virtually a pick 'em. Richmond's a 1-point favorite at home, so I mean, it's a pick 'em. You're picking them to win. St. Louis can't cover and not win. So if you're going to bet St. Louis, bet the money line, but don't bet St. Louis. Bet Richmond. Here's why. St. Louis may be ranked 22nd in the country, but they've had 7 games canceled due to COVID. They've only played 9 games all season. They are 7-2 in those 9, but their first game since December 22nd, so pre-Christmas, was on Tuesday. They lost to Dayton at home by 5. I'm telling you, coming back after a layoff, games or no games, and I don't think you could practice when you have to contact trace and socially distance when you're going through that. So it is really hard to get back and jump right into a game against a good opponent. It's hard to play in any capacity after not playing for a couple of weeks. Come to our pickup games after Christmas break or Thanksgiving break, 1 week off, and we go from bad basketball to like, you should pay us to play because we're that bad, and it'd be entertainment for the rest of the outside world. Richmond, as Josh mentioned, one of my favorite mid-major teams all season. They beat St. Joe's on Tuesday by 18. They've won 3 in a row. They're 4-2 in A10 play. St. Louis has only played 1 A10 game, and they're battle-tested. The A10 is a really good mid-major conference. So with the game being in Richmond, it virtually being a pick 'em, who's going to win, I don't know how you go against the Spiders, who are, more conditioned right now. They're in a better rhythm. They're playing well at the moment, and they have home court advantage in a pick 'em situation like that. Go with the Spiders. I hate Spiders, but Richmond's the pick.
You know, another game involving one of those top mid-major programs, we've got Omaha against South Dakota. Who you got in that one?
All right. I didn't know Omaha was a D1 school today either. That was the second school I discovered. So that's one of my favorite parts of doing these picks, guys, is I learned things I did not know. I knew South Dakota was a pick. South Dakota is an 8-point favorite. South Dakota has won 7 in a row. Omaha has lost 8 in a row. The note I wrote to myself in all caps, do not overthink this dummy. So I'm not going to overthink it. The game's in South Dakota. I've never heard of the Omaha Mavericks. I don't even 100% believe you when you say it's a real school, Josh. I'm taking South Dakota to win and cover based on the fact that Omaha, whatever. There was nothing I could find. There was not one stat I could dig up that made it seem like picking Omaha in any capacity was a good idea. There wasn't a single one, not one. So, yeah.
Well, certainly last but not least, had to close it out with a little bit of action, which, Mike, I don't know if you know this, but I guess as we're finishing up our recording for today's show, a little bit of news drop. Sounds like the WAC and the Atlantic Sun might be teaming up for a little bit of football action this fall. What are your thoughts on that?
I would be lying to say I saw a lot. I saw David E. Berry retweet Pete Thamel, and I quickly glanced at that as I was waiting for my laptop to reload. So I just saw it's combining. They need more football schools, so awesome for the WAC. And with the addition of those couple of schools, I mean, you're looking at what could be the makings of a future FBS conference. I mean, they have enough schools now, right? That's one of the underlying issues of staying in the FCS for the time being.
Well, so the thing is I think it's going to be only going to be for 1 year, because I think it's for the 2021 season only, with the ASUN schools joining forces to give them that
basically renting 3 teams, I guess you could say. I don't know. It's
renting a couple teams to get that auto bid.
Hey, whatever they have to do, and that shows you how quickly I saw the tweet. I literally scanned it. Shout out David for retweeting it. I probably wouldn't have saw it in the last few minutes, but good for the WAC. The more teams they could get, the more eyes on the conference they get, the better for Sam, the better for all the other schools joining, better for the WAC in general, which is already a really good basketball conference. So
no
should
doubt.
be exciting time.
And talk about a league that's already, generating excitement for their very first football season at the FCS level. You're adding 3 potential contenders right there. So really, really looking forward to that. But getting back on track, our final pick of the week, Mike, New Mexico State, Grand Canyon University. Does Grand Canyon keep that run moving?
All right. So the line is Grand Canyon by 2.5 points. And this is where I don't think you get analysis anywhere else besides the Bet the FCS podcast. I have a buddy who works in El Paso, Texas, who covers New Mexico State basketball. He's the former sports director at KAGS. He was Justin before Justin. His name is Colin Deaver. So when you sent me the games, naturally, I texted Colin, and I said, Colin, New Mexico State, Grand Canyon, 2.5 points. What's the pick? So let me make this very clear. If what I'm going to tell you is right, I get credit for listening to Colin, and all credit goes to me for this pick.
I just hope that this game, before we go any further, I hope this pick is not like last week, where the pick's actually for the night that we're recording.
No,
and not the next.
Yes, that was my buddy Frankel's fault. I still get credit for taking the good advice. He gets
no doubt
a lot of shame, tons of shame for not reading my instructions correctly. But I told Colin very, very, face to face, man to man, if you're right, I'm going to take all the credit. If you're wrong, all the blame's at Colin. I will shout out his Twitter handle at the end of this so you guys can tweet your frustrations if this pick is incorrect at him. But he said, quote, New Mexico State has won like 8 in a row over GCU. I'm not sure it happens tonight. I learned from talking to Colin. The Aggies have only played 4 games this year. 3 were against non-Division I teams because of COVID regulations. And until last week, they couldn't even practice in the state of New Mexico. So with that in mind, we don't know anything about New Mexico State basketball. Colin, who covers them as well as any media member in El Paso, Texas, has no idea what this team's going to look like. We do know Grand Canyon's really good this year. They're 10-3 on the season. They've won 7 in a row. Their home court is one of the elite home court advantages in college basketball pre-COVID-19 pandemic. Even with the pandemic, I'm sure it's still a pretty cool atmosphere. I don't know if they're allowing students in or not, but that stadium's just a really cool stadium. So it's in Phoenix. It's at Grand Canyon. And I'm going to go with Colin's advice. He says, I don't know enough about New Mexico State to bet on them. I'd stay away from this game. I'm not a coward. I'm going to pick the game, but I'm going to take Grand Canyon. And once again, if I'm right, you're welcome. If I'm wrong, go at Colin Deaver, KTSM on Twitter. Please direct all your frustrations at him.
Look, that's the type of detailed research you get. I know a guy, he knows a guy, we know guys, bada boom. Nah, man. No, but honestly, like, where are you going to go to get that type of information? Like, it's honestly just, you are impressing me. And I honestly love that you will take the credit for a good pick and not take the credit for a bad one. I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog world,
Hey, it's like a quarterback throwing a jump ball on a fade route, and if the receiver catches it, it's a great throw, and if it gets picked off, you didn't make a good enough effort to knock it down.
Gotta go.
You hang him out across the middle, but it hit his hands.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I had the respect and the audacity to tell Colin straight up, this is how this works. So it's not like he's going to be blindsided if somehow New Mexico State wins that game and he gets a barrage of FCS listening tweeters or the audience tweeting at him. He knows what's coming. I had the I had the courage and the cojones to tell him man to man, it's my pick if it's right, it's your pick if it's wrong.
Love it. Well, Mike, moving ahead, looking at this weekend, got a big game coming up. No odds out for this one just yet, but wanted to talk about it a little bit because whenever we're talking mid-major hoops, we discussed it a little bit, with that Abilene Christian Sam Houston game last week for that first place spot in the Southland Conference a week ago. Same thing's coming up again this week. SFA just coming off their first Southland loss of the year at Abilene Christian. So 2 one-loss teams sitting there right behind Sam Houston, still undefeated in conference play. That game's going to be on ESPNU this Sunday. I mean, there's going to be probably more eyeballs on that game than there's going to be any Southland Conference game all season long. Mike, just give me your initial thoughts. We've talked about this a lot. We kind of want to introduce this concept of a game of the weekend for just anyone, not the gamblers, anyone that's a college basketball fan that wants to tune in and kind of see some of these mid-major teams that we fall in love with in March. But our very first game of the weekend, Sam Houston versus Stephen F. Austin on ESPNU, 3 p.m. Sunday. What are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
My first thought is I'm bummed I'm not going to get to watch it because Texas A&M is having its 10-year anniversary of its national championship women's basketball team at 3 p.m. on Sunday. So my first thought is I hope it's a great game so I can watch it back later in the night. My second thought is with what Zach Nuttall and DeMarcus Lampley are doing, they deserve the national recognition that hopefully this game will bring them. After beating Duke last season, SFA is a relatively household name, which is kind of weird to say for a mid-major, but when you upset a perennial powerhouse like Duke in the fashion in which they did, it's going to get recognized. And now it's not the same when they lose a conference game because, hey, SFA is a dragon slayer. They knocked off Duke. Anytime you can beat a team that has knocked off Duke, that's a notch in your belt for a mid-major. Other than that, they're good. Like, it should be a good game. These teams are relatively evenly matched. I talked to Caleb Barnes at the Southland to WAC announcement in Houston a couple weeks ago. He works for KTRE up in the Lufkin, Nacogdoches area. And he was excited for this game. And he said, SFA has some young guys they're working in. He wasn't sure if they're quite ready for that level of competition yet. And we saw against ACU, maybe they weren't ready for that top level Southland Conference action just yet. But sometimes you rebound better from the first punch than you do from any other punch in a fight. So ACU gave them that first punch, knocked them down. Now it's about the response. And I'm going to expect, and I'd be shocked if we don't see a completely locked in and focused, motivated SFA team. But also, you're going to get that from Sam too, because it's the Battle of the Piney Woods. And anytime these two schools match up, it's that intense, vicious, ferocious, fun rivalry. So I think it's a great first game of the week choice. Bravo to everyone on this panel for picking it. And I think when you have a mid-major game, something you need is stars. And this game absolutely does not lack stars with Sam's 2 dynamic scores and SFA's leading guy who the name I'm drawing a blank on right now, but he's just as good as anyone in the Southland.
No doubt, David. I know you're a little bit removed from the Southland Conference beat writer scene, but just give me your initial thoughts too. As just kind of the fan perspective. This kind of seems like, in my opinion, obviously we talked about that Sam ACU matchup as being probably, I think, the top 2 contenders last week, and I think that's still true, especially after watching them really kind of wallop the Lumberjacks down the stretch of this week's game. But what are your thoughts, just kind of outside looking in as a college basketball fan?
Sorry, unmute. You look at it, and I think this is going to be a really fascinating game because you've got Sam coming in, and I don't necessarily think Sam can win the conference with this by winning the game, but I definitely think SFA will be out of the conference title race if they lose it, because you'll be at 2 conference losses, and then you've still got Nichols with only 1 conference loss as of now. You've got Abilene Christian; they've got the tiebreaker as of now on SFA, and then you would have Sam at the top still. So I think SFA is going to come in with a level of desperation to win, and I think Sam's going to want to come in and kind of deliver a sort of a knockout blow. I mean, obviously they can make the conference tournament, and that's kind of thing.
Well, I think
that
if
really
they're with the
Oh,
that's right with the band.
that's right.
So
Oh
they're
man,
I don't think it's official yet, but that's a thing. I think that
so
they're moving up.
I think that's even bigger because if they're not going to go to the NCAA tournament, they're really going to want to end the season on top with the conference title. So if you knock them out of regular season championship contention, like I think that'll be huge. And at a certain point, they're only going to really be able to kind of play spoiler. So I think like Sam right now, I mean, for Sam, their own reasons, they're playing so much better. And I mentioned how I covered, for you guys for the item, I covered the Sam Houston State opener against SMU, and I remember at that point thinking, like, man, this is a team with a good player in Zach Nuttall, but this is not a team. This is not a good team yet. And obviously, you've mentioned there was a lot of chemistry that needed to be built, and they've sure enough built it. So I think this game, it's going to be big. It's a rivalry game. I think this might have been the game that could have gotten maybe not a sellout, but a very good crowd. But I really wish that there, a full crowd could have been available for the game. But even still, it's going to be a huge game. It's a rivalry. And yeah, like I said, I think both teams are going to be in their own way, really, really ready to get a win. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's definitely like the conference is very strong at the top right now. You've got, SFA is still, even with the loss, they're still one of the better mid-major teams in America.
And they're a really exciting team to watch too. Just the brand of basketball they play. They love to utilize that full court press. So they're a game, if you're casually tuning in, they're going to be an exciting watch.
Yeah, and they're a team. If you've seen them in person, you're gonna love them or hate them because they're gonna make Southland Stripes. They're gonna make the officials make calls, just because of how physical they are with their press. Like they overplay on everything when it comes to defending. So they're gonna make the officials either make calls, and if they don't make calls, like it's gonna be rough for the opposing team. But no, I'm really excited for the game this weekend.
Well, Mike, we can close on this and let you elaborate on it a little bit more. But we talked about it a little bit. Zach Nuttall and DeMarcus Lampley, who Lampley, he's emerged. I think he's the leading scorer in conference play so far. So just a dynamic 1-2 punch that you really don't see at the mid-major level. I think they're still one of the top 5 scoring duos in the country. But the thing that's really impressed me is those extra pieces they have around them, and probably more than anything is their athleticism. And really, I think you can elaborate, but I think, Mike, this team's, I think they have more athleticism and maybe even more talent than that championship team a couple of years ago. Obviously, that championship team had unreal, intangibles and senior chemistry. But, just talk a little bit about those outside pieces around Zach Nuttall and DeMarcus Lampley.
Yeah, the one thing they don't have is great size. And I think that's the one weakness that this team has that's, I don't want to say glaring because they've won 10 in a row. They're 7-0 in conference. A glaring weakness can be exploited. No team's exploited them yet in that sense. And ACU did have some size, and they made them pay by going smaller and forcing those big guys to guard on the perimeter. But between Bryce Monroe, Dante Powers, Tristan Ifke, Manny Crump, number 11, Javion May. Yeah. And then number Chicago 2, the other freshman, I can't think of his name. Who's number 2?
Jaron Cook out of Dallas.
And Jaron, like, they have 6-7 guys outside of Nuttall and Lampley that you feel confident putting out on the court in a relatively important situation. And not every team, not just mid-major, but Power 5, can't go 6-7 deep in crunch time. And it gives you a little matchup versatility. If a team's bigger, you may play Ifke and Crump, which I don't think I've seen that lineup yet. I know Coach Hooten likes to have one big with 4 guards, but you have that flexibility to put 2 in, or if you want to go really 5 guard, Ifke does have some perimeter skills against ACU. He had a beautiful give and go with Lampley. Not many bigs are making that pocket pass on that backdoor cut between 4 sets of hands. That was impressive. So they're deep, and I think they're even a little deeper than we give them credit for but we haven't seen them have to go to the bench too often because the starting five and the first 2 or 3 guys off the bench have been so good. But like May, he's a guard, but he's not a little guard. Like Monroe's the only quote unquote little guard they have, but he's so quick and dynamic that he makes up for his lack of size by being a pest on defense and staying in front of people. But other than that, like Lampley's not a little dude. Nuttall's 6'3", but he's built like a brick house.
Pretty sure he's leading the team in rebounding.
Yeah, May is like a bowling ball. He's the last. I mean, I would hate to take a charge from him. Ifke's a big dude. Powers is lanky. Number 2 looks like he was built from a Greek statue. Like they have dudes who are dudes. They're not going to get out muscled and bullied around. So I think the balance is really impressive. Athletically speaking, yeah, absolutely more athletically gifted than that 2018, 2019 Southland Conference regular season championship team that went 16-2 in league play. Are they better? I think they can be, but I still think there's a way to go before saying that, because 16-2 in league play is not something to scoff at. And you see teams, they can have a bad shooting night and lose a game. Sam almost did that last night on the road in Corpus Christi, and it's a testament to Coach Hooten and this team for not crumbling under the late game pressure when, hey, shots aren't falling. I think Nuttall missed his first 9 threes, right? Comes back, hits a big one late. That alone shows me that at least the mental strength needed in close games is there. Now let's see if they can do it more than once, because we haven't seen them put teams away when they have to yet. We've seen them come close and do it for stretches, but the ACU game got a little hairier than it needed to be. Houston Baptist was closer towards the end than it probably should have been. Corpus Christi the same way. So I want to see Sam, put their foot on someone's throat and just, for lack of a better word, choke them out when they have the opportunity to.
No doubt. Got a big one coming up on Sunday against Stephen F. Austin. As we mentioned, nationally televised. Don't get to say that too often in the Southland Conference, but huge one coming up for both of these teams. Mike Lucas, our mid-major hoops insider. You can follow him on Twitter at @KAGS_Lucas. Mike, appreciate you as always, and let's keep this hot streak rolling.
Stay hot, my friend. Stay hot.